So that's stock markets. You guys can put those down here. So the next investments that I want to look at real quick is real estate. Obviously the other one that I'm doing as well. And this one can be good for a number of reasons. It could be good for tax purposes, especially if you do something like commercial real estate versus residential stuff. It's a good alternative to stocks because they don't necessarily move at the same speed. Stocks are up and down, they're very volatile, whereas real estate does move up and down. Obviously there was a housing bubble where it completely crashed in 2008, but it is a lot more steady. You'll never lose the entirety of the value unless you go, you can't pay for it, if you foreclose or something like that. But you generally, even in a bad market, you still have something worth of some value to you. However, there are some downsides for sure. First of all, it's a lot more money in one place. Like stocks, you can put in little chunks of money here and there and kind of put it all over the place, where a home or a building takes a lot of money for that one thing, right? It's also a lot more time consuming. And it can spring surprise expenses on you at any moment. One way to be profitable with real estate is to make a business of it. There's a lot of books that actually talk about doing that, a lot of really famous ones that go into a lot more detail, so I won't go into it. This is what I'm giving to you is a very much more simplified version of it. But if you're doing the business right, you can make a lot of money in real estate. Ultimately, the takeaway from this is try to find deals that give you a positive cash flow. We've talked about cash flow before, but once you have it, you're able to turn around and have people pay you enough money to either use that building or live in that building that you pay off the mortgage and have a little bit of extra cash left over. You do that to enough properties and it becomes a business. Get enough of those properties and you can live off of just that. So we've discussed this before, not in class, but I'll mention it again here just to kind of reemphasize. One slow way to use real estate to kind of build yourself up and make it something that you could retire on, and kind of an easy way, you can just kind of go through life and continue to do this, is helpful, is to go out and buy a house. Get to the point where you guys have a good enough job and you're qualified to go out and purchase a home. We talked already last section about what kind of home you should be getting and how much money you should be putting into it, but the idea behind this is go get a house, live in it for a few years, and then usually when you go and buy a house, the amount you're paying for the mortgage is greater than what you would do, for the rent in that same home. But over time, rent goes up, right? Whereas your mortgage amount stays the same. So give it a few years, and the amount of rent in your area typically is going up because, of course, it's like a bad market, or for whatever reason, your town, the values of homes are collapsing. But generally, they're moving upwards. And eventually, they're going to catch up to what you're paying for the mortgage, the insurance, and the taxes on the place. So once it's at that amount or greater, move out of that place and rent it out. Rent out that home you were in and go get a different one. And so let's assume that was 5 years down the road. 5 years after you bought the place, you can turn around, you can rent it for pretty much what you're paying for it, and let somebody else pay for it. Someone else can assume that burden, and you can go off and buy a new home. 5 years later, again, assuming that's the time frame and it works for you, you do it again. And if you keep doing that, you eventually have a number of rental properties that once they get paid off are income for you. That's one of those buckets we talked about, that passive income bucket. You have investments over here, you have real estate over here. If you build up that portfolio of rentals, and we try to, of course, we talked about before, trying to pay them down quickly, not pay as much money on interest. Once you have maybe 3 to 5 of those kind of homes, you can retire off of just that. I mean, let's assume you did that and you had nothing in stocks or anything like that. You can literally retire off the income just coming from those homes. Beware, of course, there are some pitfalls to this. One, if the rental market craters, which it has done, it did that about 12 years ago. If you have a vacant house, lets people leave it, don't want to rent it, and if you don't have enough money saved up for the time period where it's empty, or if it's a commercial property and you can't get somebody to sign up a lease, that can very quickly ruin you if you don't have any kind of cash reserves. So it's important to, when you have rental properties, to have a little extra money sitting off the side to deal with that. And you can have really big expenditures that pop up, like what if suddenly the roof needs to be fixed, or there's rot, which can be really expensive to fix. So having money for those kind of things is very important. All right, the final investment thing to talk about is investing in yourself. And I don't mean this in like the way people usually mean it when I've read about it, which is, go buy yourself a new suit so you look better and try to sell yourself to somebody, or go get some expensive, degree to go to the next level of your boring, dumb job. If you go off and get like a master's in pottery making, that's probably not going to really increase your value, even if it's something you're passionate about. So what I'm saying instead is invest in yourself by going off and studying or educating yourself, making yourself know more about these things that we're talking about. Understand money, understand investments, go study the stock market, go study the companies you want to invest in, go study real estate, go figure out how to do it. Talk to people who, myself, others who are willing to sit down with you and talk to you about, hey, here's how I would do this. And if you really want to, go start a business. That's a great investment in yourself.